It's Inappropriate Characters.
Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and I'm here tonight, as usual, with Venger and Grim Jim. And I think we're all a little bit off our game tonight. Sorry that we're starting a little bit late. I'm on the second day of recovering from a 2-day Masonic bender in Buenos Aires. So, and I don't know what the others' excuses, but I'm sure that theirs are just as good. Tonight we're going to be talking about a variety of stuff, but we're going to be starting out. I think Venger was going to talk about something, and I could barely make out what he was saying earlier. So before I collapse, it's over to you, Venger.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me. So your RPG is shit. That's the name of a hate troll blog that focuses on role-playing games and seems to probably hone in on the OSR more than other genres or aspects of the RPG industry. It's kind of like Your Dungeon is Suck, but newer, and it's laced with lots of profanity and scatological. There's like poop, photoshopped onto like various products. It's all very juvenile and stupid. But apparently a lot of people are offended by it. And one guy was outed as possibly the creator of this site. And I was just minding my own business, trying to get Chalt up and running since it's in layout and it's almost done. And then someone that I know emailed me and they're like, "Hey, did you hear about this guy? Apparently he's involved in this blog, or he's the creator of it, or something like that." And I'm like, "Okay." And the guy was prefaced it by or ended by saying like, "This is serious business." So I kind of waited to see what the fuss was about, and sure, there was a lot of people on Reddit and maybe various forums or Twitter being like, "Oh my God, this guy in his blog, so bad, bad." And then that was kind of it. And I think people returned to their lives as normal. I don't know. I mean, the guy that I work with, a guy that supposedly is behind it, and I don't care. And I haven't really received any blowback from, professionally working with him. I don't think I ever will. The site is down. Whoever is behind it closed it down after the initial spark. But the guy that supposedly did it assured me that wasn't him. I assured him I don't give a shit, but whatever. I don't know. I don't know if it's a non-story or if it's like, obviously it's not something as horrible as alleged Me Too stuff like Zach or whoever else. But apparently it's still a big deal to a lot of people. I mean, people know it's juvenile and it's it's got pictures of shit like piled onto various RPG covers. I don't know. Some people think that's funny. I don't know. It's just weird to me that it's that big of a topic, and that made people care one way or another. This guy reviewed various products. Most of them, as you can imagine, he complained about, but that's nothing new. A lot of those products have something to complain about. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it was allegedly David. How did he pronounce his name? Gull it sounds almost Welsh. David Gwell of Awful Good Games.
I'm gonna call him David Guile.
who was accused of it, and whoever is behind it does seem to know him at some remove or other. And the entire fuss kicked off because a screenshot that the blogger used happened to have David's avatar in the bottom of it, but that doesn't really mean much. It just means he took the screenshot of this person, and it was supposedly for trans shaming or something, but the target isn't trans. They just kind of look a bit effeminate. Or at least they say they're not trans. I don't know. It all gets rather confusing. But David actually came to me when all this kicked off privately, asking for help in how to deal with it, because he knows that, you know, I've had to deal with this kind of pushback and stuff. I did give him advice, and I interviewed him on my channel and talked about it a couple of times. There doesn't really seem to be much of anything to it. But what's the aspect to it all that I find interesting, as usual, is how quick people are to believe and to condemn someone on the basis of basically fuck all. And that Your Dungeon is Suck has existed for years with relatively little fuss or upset. This seems to probably be left alone because it picks the right targets. I mean, it attacks
exactly.
It attacks us regularly. It's attacked Zach in the past, and so on, and a really kind of vicious, nasty stuff, really. But no one has kicked up a stink about that. This attacked things like Dungeon World, the more kind of progressive-y type games. But that's part of the reason I think it's weird to blame David, because he's published a ton of stuff for Dungeon World. He seems to like the game, even if only commercially. So it would make no sense for him to attack it. But it picked the wrong targets, and they found some hook, however slender, to attack someone with, and so off they went. David seems to not be particularly political or anything online, so quite why they decided to pin it on him and be quite so hateful towards him, I don't know. But yeah, I guess Your Dungeon is Suck is just the right target. Yeah, go on.
Sorry. Oh, all right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is very clearly, you hit the nail on the head there, Grim, that the reason that there's all this freaking out is because while Your Dungeon is Suck went after the OSR and the grognards and stuff like that, right? Your RPG is Shit went after story games and, you know, Apocalypse World crap and all of that. So it was that the target was the wrong target, right? It wasn't the target the SJWs wanted to attack. If you're attacking the OSR, you know, the outrage mob isn't going to come for you because they are outraged at the OSR. But he was attacking the favorite games of the pretentious wanker crowd. So now I've got to say, I'm not sure. I have no idea if David Guile did this or didn't, right? But we've just heard in this shortest span that he is a friend of Venger's and a friend of yours. So saying he is a political or beyond controversy seems to me to be a little uncertain. I'm going to add a third one to the mix, which is that he was one of many, many people who approached me when I was going to start doing what became the RPG Pundit Presents series. And I was looking for a publisher. I made an open call for publishers to pitch me why they should be the person I work with on this. Eventually, Presses Intermedia, who I'd worked with before, won out. But there were a number of different guys that approached me. He was one of them. So, I mean, you know, at the very least, David Guile is guilty of not having the right friends and business associates, right? At the very least.
Yeah.
Now, if he did do it, I would be really disappointed that he taken ownership of it and ridden that thing like a bitch, right? Because that would have been totally to his advantage. Now, if he really didn't do it, I think he went about proving that he didn't do it in the worst possible way imaginable, right? The first thing he did, instead of disavowing, instead of coming forward and saying, I had nothing to do, his site, he closed his Twitter, all this stuff, right? He shut everything down and tried to hide. And that made him absolutely look guilty, right? And then the second thing he did, of all people, he came to you, right? Now, I'm sure he came to you, Grim, because you gave him a fair shake. But coming to you when the SJW crowd is after you is probably the worst way to get the SJW crowd off your back, right? Because they're going to be like, oh, he's with Grim. We called him a rape apologist, Jim, right? Obviously, David Guile must be guilty now, right? Like this was not clever on his part, right? Like, I mean, if I had been the author of that blog and and they caught me, I would have admitted it. And if I wasn't the author of that blog, if someone had said, oh, the RPG Pundit was the secret writer of the Your Dungeon is Shit thing, I would have said, no,
you're breaking up quite a bit.
Not, right? I'm not, and I have nothing, right?
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit, Pundit.
Sorry?
You're breaking up quite a bit. You might want to switch your video off or try reconnecting.
All right. Well, I guess I can try to do that.
We could just about follow you, but it's a bit difficult. Just give you a sec.
Okay. Are any of the audience having trouble hearing us?
That'll take them a few minutes to catch up.
That's because we're on the same channel. Maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna try to reconnect here. Just a sec.
Okay. I mean, I heard from David that I don't know if he confirmed that with you, that Drive-Thru RPG or One Bookshelf was like giving him a hard time and like threatening to, I don't know, like close his account or something.
I don't know how much of that is public knowledge or is meant to be public knowledge, but I think it's out there now that basically they were threatening him that if the blog wasn't taken down, his material would be removed from Drive-Thru, which is not a good development. I don't think. Holding people accountable for things they do off-site doesn't seem to me to be something we want to spread, but that does seem to be the way that things are going. I think that's pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
Is that a cat's ass? What are you doing?
All right. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, seems a bit better. We were just saying, though, the other aspect of this story, though I'm not sure how much detail we can go into, is that Drive-Thru were essentially threatening to shut down his business through them if this blog didn't get deleted, which is... I mean, suppose he did run the blog. So fucking what? What business is it of theirs or anyone else's? You're allowed to have bad opinions on the internet.
Not anymore.
Sorry, what? Sorry, what did Drive-Thru do?
Well, not sure how much of this is meant to be public or not, but allegedly they were threatening that they would take down his products if this blog didn't disappear. This YourRPGSucks blog. And it's still not confirmed it ever was him. So
that's absolutely ridiculous. And if they tried to do that, and he really isn't the author of that site, he'd have a lawsuit, on his hands there.
Yeah, but in this business, who can really afford a lawsuit other than Steve Jackson Games? Really, that's about it. They seem rather keen.
You can crowdfund for that sort of thing.
True. I mean, that's happened around Gamergate and around Comicsgate, lawsuit funding. So maybe there's that. But that's another whole aspect to this.
That's a whole other kettle of fish, right? But I mean, like I think that's one of the big ways we're going to beat back the SJWs is make it too pricey for them to pull
your connection's still still stuttering out a bit. It might be better if you switch the video off and just do audio.
How the hell do I do that?
I don't know, because I don't use the thing through mobile, so I couldn't tell you.
Is this is getting maybe slightly off topic, but then again, it's still kind of in our wheelhouse. But is that kind of thing sort of endemic of big tech and what we've been seeing with their bias and their agenda and their like leftist kind of activism, where they're so ready to shut people down, to ban people, to demonetize, deplatform? I mean, big tech just thinks it's like their God-given right to interfere and police like all these different areas that really shouldn't have anything to do with them.
I don't think it's necessarily politically aligned. I mean, it's the US left at the moment that seems to be doing it the most. But there's things like dress codes in Christian schools or conduct requirements, which strictly speaking are illegal, that get enforced. It's just we're noticing it more because it's on the left side, because it is this big tech. I mean, we've got Twitter holding people accountable for manifest observable behavior or whatever else you want to call it. Plenty of other platforms also trying to hold people accountable for things they do off platform. I mean, in some instances, I can see that making sense. You know, if someone's got a conviction for kiddie diddling or something, you don't want them on your social media platform interacting with young teenagers or whatever. That makes sense. But having shitty opinions or slagging off products, whatever that case might be, that seems to me to be rather slim grounds on which to punish somebody.
Even criticizing the wrong people can get you, they'll throw the book at you. And for what? But people are starting to sue back, Twitter and probably Facebook and those guys, because it is kind of bullshit and arbitrary and probably illegal what they're doing.
Yeah, on the one hand, they are private businesses, so to an extent, they have rights in that arena. But then it is the public square now. This is where the conversation takes place. This is where politics takes place. This is where culture takes place. And we shouldn't be handing private entities that degree of control over that conversation.
Right. If they have rules and regulations, they should be abiding by their own set of standards. They shouldn't be playing favorites, and they shouldn't be, winking at one side and like slamming the hammer down on the other side just because, I don't know, they're political opponents or.
Yeah, I think a lot of them honestly don't understand that they're biased. They just can't comprehend that. They don't see it that way. That's not the paradigm in which they interact with the world. They genuinely think they're doing good. Pundit, do you want to try speaking, see if we fixed it now?
Yes, let's sound test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's a lot clearer. So hopefully that'll. Seems like it's a bandwidth issue with your internet at the moment.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. It might be either that my phone needs to be rebooted, or there's a very warm front winter storm here going on. It's like 24 degrees here in the middle of winter, where Celsius, that is. I don't remember what that is in Fahrenheit, so Americans will have to forgive me. But it's warm. It's like in Canada, like right now, it's 10 p.m. and it's that temperature. In Canada, this would be like a midday summer's day, right? So,
that's about 75 Fahrenheit for our imperialist friends.
All right. So, I've been listening to what you guys have been saying. And I mostly agree with you. I think that you can't just say, oh, it's a left and right issue, though, because the difference is that nowadays fundamentalist Christianity doesn't have the power to destroy the life of anyone over 18. Okay.
Yeah.
It used to be a time where, yes, you could have had the moral majority come in and and ruin your business or ruin your life. Right now, that can't happen, but the left can. The left can destroy your life if they really put a bit of an effort to it.
I was just pointing out that similar bullshit happens on both sides, but yeah, you're right. This is a matter of scale and capacity for harm.
I mean, it's about who's in power, right? Like who's the one in charge right now in the culture, and right now the left is the one in charge in the culture. In the 70s and as late as the 80s, the right was still the dominant cultural force, right? But it isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably move on to another topic.
Yep. So shall I take the reality check board game, which was our next topic? So there was this Kickstarter, which is where so many problems start, for a board/card game called Reality Check, the Game of Privilege. Which in concept is very similar to a game that I put out called Privilege Check. I mean, the whole progressive stack, measuring your disadvantages and disabilities against other people's disadvantages and disabilities, what some people call the oppression Olympics. It's so obviously gameable that I'm honestly surprised more people haven't made games about this. But yeah, this promotion came out. They hit their goals, as far as I'm aware. The product seems set to be coming out, and then it finally kind of garnered the negative attention that obviously inevitably was going to from woke Twitter, including our friend at Sword Dream and a few others. And it completely blew up in exactly the kind of predictable way that you'd expect, all the usual kind of accusations and so on. Even though, like my game, it's satirizing this kind of febrile atmosphere, this one-downmanship that goes on. But what I find really interesting about this instance is that, unlike me, they have made a really concerted effort to do everything that the woke crowd would want someone to do. They've had sensitivity readers, they've had diverse people on board with creating the game. They've got a board of people set aside to review the material and make sure that there's no problem with it. They've jumped through every hoop, they've dotted every I, crossed every T, and still had a load of shit fall on them for it. These accusations of racism and white wokeness. They were even told off for having diverse people in their promotional photos and things. Oh, this is just tokenism, which is what I always say. But it's just kind of gratifying in one way and horrifying in another to see a board game creator go out of their way to do everything that is consistently and constantly demanded of all of us in an industry where margins are already razor thin, and still get shit. Now, I'm sure it's been good for their promotion, but it's just shown that all these attempts to make it more palatable, to do everything that you're asked to do, makes no difference whatsoever. So you may as well not waste the time or the money doing it, because it counts for nothing. You're still going to get the same kind of abuse and boycott threats and threats to your jobs and everything else, even if you do everything that they ask of you. It's just fascinating to me on that level.
Yeah, I mean, we've known that for a long time now, right? Where we've had, there've been all sorts of cases in different elements of media where the people producing the media have tried to show some degree of wokeness, and the response from the SJWs to that is always, this is not woke enough, right? Now, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because I only had time to look at a little bit about this case, it being a board game or a non-RPG game. I wasn't really super familiar with it. But from what I saw, I am left kind of with the question of, did they actually hire a diversity panel or something like that Or was it like, okay, I have a black friend, I showed it to him and he said it was okay? Or was it just bullshit that they said to just kind of brush off the SJWs, right? It could have been any of the three. The point really, though, is that they shouldn't have to do any of that. Like, who the hell cares, right? Like, they should just do the product, and if there shouldn't be a barrier that says you're not allowed to do this, because some people will feel offended, because people feel offended at everything, right? So there's no that can't be the basis in which to stifle creativity. Like, George Carlin's old thing about 7 words you can't say on television. Well, nowadays you can say all of those words. Nobody's being a rebel by saying fuck, right? Nobody's being a rebel by saying cunt, right? But we all know that there are other words now that you cannot say, right? Other things you can't say. And so, if you're going to be rebellious, those are the words you now have to say, right? Those are the things you now have to say, because there is no rebelliousness in saying things that were controversial 30 or 40 years ago, but that today have been normalized, right? It's why I keep saying the only way to be punk in 2019 is to be right wing, because there's nothing the slightest bit punk, slightest bit rebellious about being left wing. The left wing are the dominant cultural paradigm.
There is still the dirtbag left, people like Red Scare and so on, I suppose, who are still rebels from the left against this.
An era where a guy just threw Molotov cocktails and shot at a government building, and the left praised him for it, right? He died, and they shot him, and they called it unfair that he was shot for shooting at government workers, and then they called him a martyr, right? And the media either didn't report on it at all, or if they reported on it, they reported on it as if favorably to this piece of human garbage, right?
I compared it to the Pizzagate shooting incident. It seemed to me to be very similar, the kind of hyped media creating this degree of hatred.
How, like, the conspiracy theory about that pizza parlor in DC being like a secret Illuminati headquarters led a nutcase to go and shoot at it.
Yeah. And in this case,
the start of that, it's the same. It's the same start as this Antifa batshit piece of garbage going and shooting at a government building, right? Because there was a border patrol or ICE or whatever building. But the difference is in the reaction, right? Like, the right looked at that and said, holy crap, right? And then distanced itself and denied and rejected that whole wing of its absolute lunatic fringe. Whereas Antifa has had gushing reports about it on CNN. They're praised as heroes in popular magazines and websites and the TV stations. And then after this guy shoots up a government building, they still don't disavow them, right? They still think of them as heroes. So anyway, but the point is that this game shouldn't have had to do any of that. But if I also kind of doubt how much they did. Like, I'm not too sure, because the game itself is so politically incorrect. Like, why would you or I ever hire a diversity panel? No, right? I mean, and the guy who made this is closer to you or I than to the type of people who would hire a diversity panel.
Well, I've done a bit of digging, and the makers seem to be kind of standard issue pod people, sort of Bay Area hipsters. So I think some of the people they've said are checking are their friends, but there are also people on Twitter who seem to have been engaged in at least a semi-professional manner to look over their stuff. So it seems to be a bit of a combination. And I suspect there's a little bit of resentment going on that they're not bigger in whatever it is that they're doing, because a lot of the targets of their satire and criticism are things like South by Southwest and so on. There's those big kind of pretentious tech hipster meetups and things. So there might be a little bit of jealousy and resentment going on. But I also think that the people reacting to them don't understand that they have this cultural hegemonic power, right? They look at the political institutions and they see Donald Trump and whatever else. And so they think that also culturally they're the little guy, and that if you make fun of this super woke culture, you're somehow punching down, whereas you're not. I mean, it's immensely powerful. It's just not institutionally powerful in law or governance or wherever else, but it doesn't need to be. It can bypass all of that. You say the wrong word on social media and your life can be over. That's a tremendous amount of power. So to criticize that, to satirize that, to point out its foibles and stupidities is not punching down, it's punching up at people wielding stupid amounts of power in society.
Yeah, it might be only 4 or 5 women in Congress, but it's like half of Twitter and Facebook and, everywhere else that communication and dialogue happens.
It's Google. It's Google, the company, the most important internet company in the world, is absolutely riddled with radical leftists who we now know, thanks to Project Veritas, were intentionally trying to sabotage Donald Trump's campaign in 2016. They probably cost him somewhere around 4 million votes between Google and Facebook, because Facebook is also doing this, and have said openly in their internal conversations that have now been exposed that they plan to do it again and do it better in 2020, right? So these are people who are literally interfering in an election. They're probably guilty of treason, right? Like, some of these people probably need to be at the very least locked up, right? And you're trying to tell me that the left doesn't have any power. That's the most powerful force in the world now, right?
It's the usual thing that goes wrong, I think. On the left, there are different things that go wrong on the right, I think, but whenever the left sort of centralizes too much power, I think a certain amount is fine, but whenever too much power ends up in too few hands under whatever system, the temptation to be corrupt and to abuse that power is too big. Whether it's one corporation getting too much power, or a government getting too much power, or an individual getting too much power, that's always where everything seems to go off the rails.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Like the EU, for example.
Except it's not centralized, but that's an argument for another day.
They just made what was I forget the woman's name, the German woman, Angela Merkel's handpicked choice that was forced into being EU, commissioner, and so yeah, but it's definitely not the Fourth Reich there. I'm sure it's not, Grim.
Well, they have to be confirmed.
I want to say one more thing about the game, right?
Yeah.
If you're right that it was Bay Area hipsters that made this game, that's kind of interesting too, right? Because it's leading me to wonder. I mean, we all know, you just have to watch Soph's channel to know that the Gen Z kids are starting to push back. They're because they grew up only knowing this particular group, the left, as the SJW left specifically, as the establishment, right? They never had any other establishment but them. So obviously, if you're a kid now and you're going to rebel, that's the establishment you're going to rebel against. But we're seeing also, in other areas, obviously among adults in some parts of the world and in some places and in some contexts, pushing back against this political correctness. But if it's like getting to the point where you have Bay Area hipsters making politically incorrect games now, I think that's a very interesting little canary in the coal mine, as it were, right? Like if you start getting San Francisco or Seattle or Portland hipsters deciding, no, we've gone too far, then you've probably really, really gone too far.
Yeah, there is hope. Before we move on, it might be worth just reading their mission statement, because it kind of shows I think what their intention is and how weird it is that all this backlash has hit them. So they say that the goal of this game is to offer an understanding of privilege. They're seeking to educate, right? And give people the tools to create a more empathetic and just world. We've taken an absurdist and satirical approach to reflect the harsh realities of our absurd world. This choice is in an effort to create both a cathartic and accessible formula that reaches the widest possible audience of all ideologies. We believe that Black Lives Matter, healthcare is a right, women's rights are human rights, no human is illegal, love is love, gender is not binary, climate change is real, corporations are not people, the earth is round, a nation is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable people. So, everything there, your standard issue liberal consensus, at least as far as the US is concerned, right? And they've done all of these things to be okay, and it's still not good enough. You cannot even slightly make fun of these sacred cows or point out when your own side is doing something stupid. There's no capacity for self-reflection.
Without looking at or playing the game myself, I'm left with three possible conclusions from what you've just read, right? Either this is a case study in SJWism gone too far, right? These are people that did everything perfectly right and are still being persecuted, right? And they've just proven why this sort of thing is a problem. Or these guys were kind of like they had like some kind of multiple personality disorder thing happening where they were trying to appease both sides and it really just didn't work for them. Or these are like epic level master trollers, right? Doing making that where even their mission statement is really just trying to pull a fast one,
It's so difficult to tell these days.
Nobody knows what's satire anymore, right? Like we have no idea, right? Like you look at an article, you're like, wait, is this like The Onion or the Babylon Bee, or is this CNN, right? Because it's just like the line between satire and reality has completely collapsed.
Forget the 10 Commandments, right? Poe's law should be graven in stone on every street corner and in front of every courthouse.
Yeah.
Right. Shall we move on then?
Yeah. All right.
Venja, you better go first on this because you'll be having to head off soon. But we were going to actually talk about something positive for a change. Which is how to promote your games.
More specifically, before we jump in with Venger, it's not how we promote our games, but about things that you would advise to someone who's trying to publish their first game about what are the right ways and the wrong ways. Like, what's the way to help your promotion have positive results versus promotion or efforts of promotion that are going to end up causing you problems.
Yeah. So what's your take, Venger?
Some of the time I think I do okay, and then some of the time I'm like, I probably dug myself into more holes than I should have, and whatever advice, whatever path I've set out and trail I've blazed for people, go a different way. Don't follow me because I do all right, but then another times I look and I'm like, wow, if I just quit and like never did another thing with the RPG stuff, 3, maybe 4 people would be disappointed, and then I would just vanish. Hopefully that's not true. Maybe that's just me being pessimistic and nobody emailing me in 2 months. But do what you love, I guess. Don't try to force anything just because of commercialism or because you think something is going to be hot or a fad or like popular. I mean, you can make choices. If there's A, B, and C is clearly going to get more people's eyes on a product, and all of them are something that you can see doing or aesthetically valid to you, then go with C, because if it's a question of having everyone on the cover like all different races and genders and creeds, and maybe B is, I don't know, putting D&D or Powered by the Apocalypse or whatever you can license to get promotion that way. And then C, maybe just have a guy draw a big set of titties on the cover. And, C is probably going to be what I would do. But then most people would probably choose B, and I think they'd be farther ahead in life and RPGs. And then some people will choose A, and I guess maybe the flavor of the week that gets some woke points or whatever. But really, it's the artistic merit and the gamers that appreciate that, and not whatever Twitter says about you, or I don't know, Facebook friends and stuff like that. So yeah, just go with what you love. Stick by the tried and true, TNA and gore and tentacles. Can't go wrong there. Just be true to yourself. I think that's all I got tonight.
So I'm pretty sure Venture is the only man left in 2019 whose chief advice for publishing is put a big pair of titties on the cover. That's just, I tip my hat to you, sir. That's just unbelievable.
Try. I do try.
You're the modern day Kevin Symbieta.
It certainly doesn't hurt, even in today's
battle mech titties.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was Kevin Symbieta's whole formula, right? It was like appeal to people's inner 14-year-old boy by having giant robots and large-titted women on his covers. Occasionally,
people are still defending. People still, where I just said, still propping up Palladium games and riffs and all that stuff, like on Twitter. We were talking about that on Twitter just the other day. Like, do people even play those games anymore? Probably not, because they were terrible. The rules sucked, and it was all just kind of like juvenile and occasionally felt slapped together. There were some cool things in there and some nice artwork, but system-wise, it was just kind of a black hole. But yet you and a bunch of other people were like, no, it's still cool, or it was pretty decent, and we had fun. So that's the testament to their advertising and their aesthetic or brand. Wherever they didn't work, because people are still like talking them up.
Yeah, tits do work. It is true. Boobies do still sell, and
thank you.
But art is a huge thing. It's definitely worth at least investing in some cover art. But a word of caution on the boobies front. It still should be relevant to the game in some way. I think was it Avalanche Press that did the series of books that were all hugely busty covers, but they had almost
women on the cover, regardless of what the subject was. Yeah,
but it had absolutely nothing to do with what was inside. In that way, it was a lot like a lot of the old pulp magazines, where the covers, promised a lot more scantily clad sexual content than was actually there, which is kind of a good pulp aesthetic. But I think in games you need to follow it up with some content, like the blind psychic warrior women in Rifts. Sure, they were there to have tits on the cover, but they were also something in the game. So
I don't think I've ever had a large-titted woman on a cover of my game.
That is where you fail.
Ironically, I am the person that made the first ever RPG with a heroic transgender character on the cover, so much to the chagrin of the SJWs.
But did they have big titties? This is the question.
Well, not especially, no. And they were kind of, it's the Arrows of Indra cover. I think people watching right now can see the cover, and so the figures themselves are not central in the image. The image is a fight scene with a temple and a monster and all this, and there's some heroes fighting there. So you don't really, it's not a close up or something like that. But anyway, I brought up this topic because of a specific case, right? There's a guy who has been on the RPG site now in the news forum posting about his game. And recently he had I got into contact with him. He's had some trouble in his threads, right? And the problem was the first mistake he made is he'd gone to 4chan, right? And on 4chan, he had tried to promote his game and he got a lot of trolling. And I think that put up his defenses, right? And so after that, he was always expecting, I think, to get attacked at some point. And besides this, he got some criticism of his games, and I think of his first product. And I think he was very worried about, public criticism of his product, meaning that people are going to be turned away from the product. And so he reacted kind of negatively to the direct criticism. And then after that, made a point of trying to avoid giving too much away about what his product had in it. But this has caused some obviously bigger problems for him because, he was also worried that someone would steal his intellectual property or something like that. And so when people were asking him really basic questions, like, what's the basic mechanic of your game? He'd say, well, I can't tell you that right now, but trust me, my game is really great, right? And then, of course, the RPG site gunslingers came in and were starting to, shoot holes into him, right? And so this was an escalating problem. And so finally, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to give this guy some free consulting advice here, which, I usually charge for this sort of stuff, but I don't know. I had a moment of human kindness here, and I tried to explain. So the first thing is...
RPG Pundit's milkshake makes all the boys come to the yard.
So the first thing is this, right? Like, you have to be very careful about how you react or how you respond to challenging things online about your game, like to people writing negative reviews or to people criticizing your approach or whatever. Because, and I'm not saying you shouldn't just ignore it necessarily, or that you shouldn't sometimes say, like, if someone's outright lying about your game, you can post and say, this is a lie, right? But if they're criticizing some part of your game and it's something that's actually in your game or in your product, then what you should say is, well, yes, it's like this and this and this, and you should give information, let people make up their own minds and say, yeah, you might not like this. I'm sorry you don't like it, but I did it for this reason or whatever, or maybe it was a mistake, right? Or a typo or something like that. Don't try to hide those things out of fear that people are gonna not want you to buy your game, right? And definitely stop worrying. There are no secret RPG ninjas that are coming to steal your product, right? Like, don't worry about trying to be secretive about a product that hasn't come out yet. I was talking to someone, they were saying, oh, well, but what if Wizards of the Coast stole my rules? Well, first of all, if Wizards of the Coast steals your rules, that is the best thing that could have ever happened to you as a designer, right? You'll be famous after that. You'll be able to say, Wizards of the Coast borrowed my mechanic that I came up with. And so suddenly you're going to have way more publicity for that than you would have ever had if they hadn't stolen your mechanic, right? Second, of course, that's never going to happen, right? Wizards of the Coast has a 2-year turnover. I mean, like, I know this for a fact. It takes them almost 2 years from when they start working on some kind of a project until when it's done, right? So they're not just going to randomly find something that you mentioned about a game that you're coming out with in a month and swoop in and publish a book about it before you do, right? That's never going to happen, right? But anybody else steals your stuff, well, that doesn't matter either. What matters is that you can direct that. Like, you got to do a kind of an RPG promotion Tai Chi move, right? Where you redirect, or Aikido, you redirect an attack into something that can be useful to you, right? Like I said to this guy, what happened when I found out that the first time I found out that one of my games was being pirated? Well, it's some people would have tried to do like cease and desist letters or stuff like that, right? I made sure everybody knew my game was being pirated. I didn't post where it was being pirated, but I made sure everybody knew that, because that means that there are people interested in the game. That means that it's something worth looking at, right? And I know that most people are going to rip off your game in that way are people that would never have bought the game anyways. And some of them might rip off your game and then decide to buy it, like to buy the hardcover or the paperback or whatever. And so that makes it worthwhile, right? So you shouldn't be afraid of exposure, right? This guy was concerned that people would share some details about his game. When I had people asking about Lion and Dragon, I did a whole video on my YouTube channel where I pretty much went page by page looking through Lion and Dragon there on the video. Let people see everything. It doesn't matter, because that me doing that video made a very significant increase in the sales of Lion and Dragon, right? And in fact, me showing off Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion on YouTube have meant that since I started my YouTube channel, the sales of those products, which are both like old products now, right? Like Lion and Dragon is more than a year old, and Dark Albion is more than 2 years old. And instead of continuing to dip down in sales, the sales have just about like tripled from what they were before I started the YouTube. They've both gone gold on DTRPG, right? So for me, the moral of the whole story is try to be as open as possible, right? Share what you love about your game. Promote by giving information, not by trying to hold on to it. And when people attack your game, respond by showing more of your game, right? Show what they're talking about so people can then see if that attack is legitimate or not, right? And spin it in the form of saying, well, maybe some people won't like this, but some other people will like this, right? I'm just getting comments right now. Someone said, I just, here on our chat, someone just posted, Dracopol said, I bought Lion and Dragon because of that in-depth autopsy video, right? And Buried Axe Blade said, Lion and Dragon really helped me make NPCs. So, this works, right? And that's my advice to people who are planning their first game is don't try to be shut down, to be secretive. Don't try to control what other people are going to say about your game, but find ways to respond to what they say that will make attention to your game and get people thinking about and looking at your game. Any thoughts, Grim?
I think both of you made good points. I think in any hobby industry, one of the best things that you can do is to do something that you love, because enthusiasm is infectious. If you've made a game that you really love on a subject that you are really interested in, then that will come through whenever you talk about it. Or whenever anyone asks you questions about it, even in text, which is the least emotive form of communication, at least online, it will still come through. So that, I think that's important. I mean, we discussed art somewhat tongue-in-cheek or tongue-in-boob, if you will, but it is important. Artwork gives people something visual that they can share. So if other people get enthusiastic and interested in your game, which you want them to, right? It's good to give them something that they can share around. It doesn't have to be boobies. I think of my games, the one that really caught people's attention visually the most was probably the cover to Agents of Swing, which is just colored silhouettes. But it kind of hit that 60s design style pretty well, pretty hard, and a lot of people shared that around, so that was useful. Like Pundit's saying, don't be afraid to show off your game. You can't copyright mechanics anyway, only their expression. So game rules is just you can't protect them, so why bother? Basically. And a lot of people do get interested and nerdy about the particular way in which a mechanic works. That can be a way to hook people's interest. If you're using a pre-established system, there's some people who are wonks for D20 or the current incarnation of the 5th Ed D&D system, or Fate, or one of the other licensable systems. Savage Worlds are a bit tighter on what they allow, but there are people that will pretty much hoover up anything that's Savage Worlds. Or if you've got your own system, you can sell it on particular points or aspects that it has that interests people. Think of the games that I've done. The alien species creation in Machinations of the Space Princess is something that's really got the rules wonks hooked, and they like to ask me questions about that and talk about that. My more recent game, Actual Fucking Monsters, has quite an interesting system, which the hunger mechanic for monsters basically limits the dice type that you can roll. So there's a mechanical method for forcing people to feed and do horrible deeds and so on that drives the story. And some people are really interested in that from a more narrativist point of view. So, you can sell it on mechanics, you can sell it on art. You have to bring all of these things together. And if it's a setting or a subject that you're enthusiastic about, that's the thing. There isn't the money in this industry to blow a lot generally on advertising and so on. So you rely on word of mouth. This is going to sound like weird advice coming from me in particular, but I don't know that courting controversy is a good idea in the long run. It's kind of incidental that I end up dealing with controversial topics because they're what interests me, right? And my first bit of advice, or Venger's first bit of advice, is to do something you love. And I'm interested in controversial topics and how they intersect and everything. It can be really good for publicity in the short term. Every time there has been some kind of stink kicked up around me, I have seen a short-term, fortnight to a month, perhaps, boost in sales, and it can be quite significant. But in the longer term, I don't think it pays off. So
I'm not sure I agree.
Well, yeah. And I'm kind of both ways on it. I'm not sure whether it's good or not. But my gut feeling, and from examining the long-term statistics, the stuff that's controversial can have a very short-term boost, but tails off very rapidly. Whereas my less controversial stuff has makes more money in the long term. So I don't know. You can pick and choose, but I don't actually set out to court controversy.
Yeah, I guess it depends how you're controversial, maybe, right? Like, none of my games are controversial games as such, right? I mean, of course, anybody can take any game, as we've been talking about tonight, and decide that there's something, problematic, in quotes, about it, right? But I don't even have boobs in my game. I don't. I mean, I have fantastic looking medieval art in Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion, right? But that's pretty much the extent of it, right? But so my games aren't as such controversial, but I'm controversial, and I think that controversy and the continued efforts of certain people to try to pin me as controversial and then end up looking stupid has probably helped me. It's hard to argue with success, right? I'm able to basically live off of my RPGs now. Like it's not all of my income, but it's a very important part of my income. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, there is a certain contingent of people who will support someone like me or Pundit or Venger purely to stick a middle finger up at some people. And as more and more people get pissed off by the woke crowd, that audience increases. So that's a growth market. I think people who want to stick a middle finger up.
I'll say this: if you don't produce quality, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how controversial you are or how on the other side how woke you are. Which is the problem the woke people have. Most SJWs are just they can't actually meme. They can't meme and they can't make games, right? Like their games are all garbage, right? And so this is why they try to rely on wokeness. And there are probably some people whose games are garbage and they try to rely on being, controversial, right? On being whatever, be it right wing or politically incorrect or, what have you, as a substitute for not making good games, right? And if that's what you're doing, you're going to fail no matter what, right?
Yeah.
If you're making good games, you can be excused for just about anything, right? Like, I think it wouldn't matter. Like, you could be the most left-wing person in the world, but if your game is totally awesome, I'll probably buy it, right? And it just doesn't happen pretty much ever, right? But and you could be a controversy hoarding shitlord like myself, and people will still end up buying my games because the games themselves are good if you're, especially if you're an OSR type person, right? So I think that's probably the central thing, is to work on the craft of your game, right? And, court controversy or not, that kind of depends on you. We just got a comment here. Trevor Hurst said, I bought Lion and Dragon with my middle finger up, but in the end, I ended up really liking the game. So there we go.
Yeah. I think the only other piece of advice I would give would be not to overdo it, which is where you two might disagree with me, but too much marketing, too much aggressively selling your product every chance you get, like the way Sword Dream or Zweihander do, that's a route to pissing people off, I think.
I would
I agree with
that, but apparently that guy seems to be like, his game seems to be really, really popular and extremely financially successful. So what do I know? But I also have that same instinct where at a certain point, maybe less is more, and the game or your brand or your reputation should kind of like stand on its own. Again, probably don't follow my advice because, a few things keep generating money and hits or whatever, like Alpha Blue. But other things, it's hit or miss. But anyway, great discussion, guys. I do have to go, and hopefully by our next show, I will not be divorced.
Good luck.
Good luck. Tentacles crossed.
Good luck.
Thank you. I will probably need it tonight. Venture's been very bad. Very, very, very bad.
Ice
All
cream
right.
and chocolates.
See you guys.
Later.
Remember, everyone, if you don't want Venture to get into trouble with his wife, please support us on Patreon. And the more support we get, the more likely we'll be able to make shows more often. And the more likely Venture will be able to keep his marriage together and come and join us till the end of a program. I would say, first of all, I have my doubts about how successful that game is, but I do think that there is a limit of just how much promotion you can do, or especially the type of promotion you can do. I don't think anyone really cares if you're like posting a link to your game on a whole bunch of social media groups or things like that, right? I think where people will be unhappy is with two things, right? One is derailing posts, subjects, or threads on social media just to promote your product, right? Like where there's a conversation going on that has nothing to do with your game, and you jump in there and use the flimsiest of excuses to link to your game, right? That sort of thing is looked at pretty poorly. Or the other thing would be if you're starting, it's basically like there's a very fine line between making a thread or a post about your game that's actually informative and doing one that's just an infomercial, right? That has like nothing of value, nothing to discuss, and is really just an ad in disguise, right? And I think people really don't like that. This is my experience as an admin on the RPG site, right? Because there are lots of people who are self-publishing games that are on the RPG site, and some of them are really well received, and some of them have some very bad reactions, right? And the ones that are really well received are the ones that are like talking about their game in the appropriate subject threads in the appropriate context. Like if you're talking about the D&D magic system, and you jump in and say, hey, my game uses the basis of the D&D rules, but it changes this and this and this, and I did it because of that, right? Like they're gonna find that interesting. That's fine, right? If they're talking about the D&D magic system, you're like, hey guys, how about we talk about monsters? Check out my new monster book, right? And you put a link there. That's going to be really badly received. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
and if you do a post on a thread that is, sorry?
I was to say, I'm terrible at self-promotion. I'm terrible at self-promotion, so don't do what I do. But then someone like you know, Sword Dream or Zweihander, they're too far the other way, I think. So there's got to be some kind of ground in
there's
the
been
middle.
a lot of, there's a lot of places that Daniel Fox can't post anymore. Let's put it that way, right? So likewise, if you start a thread that is just really clearly just meant to try to get hits to your website, people aren't going to like that, right? But if you start a thread where you do some kind of an analysis of your own game, or you put out some vital detail or some interesting images or something like that, and like open up to questions, you do an AMA sort of thing, right? Or anything like that, people will like that, right? Like this guy I'm talking about, the problem he had is he posted an ad on the news section of the RPG site. I mean, it's the news section. It's a place where you're allowed to post ads about your games, right? But then when people started asking questions, he either refused to kind of answer to give the information that they were asking about. They were asking, again, really simple questions like, how do the basic mechanics work? How do you do a skill check in your game, right? And he would be evasive about that. Or people would jump in and comment on how he had, overreacted over on some other thing on 4chan, I guess it was. And he'd react badly to that, right? So like you got to really watch that sort of thing, and especially don't end up looking like you're being defensive, and don't end up looking like you're basically getting mad at someone because they've said something about your game, because that means most people reading that, they'll look at it and they go, well, it's probably true because look at how mad he is, right? Yeah, that's how I look at it, and yeah, there are limits to self-promotion, and this is coming from someone who is just an absolute and total self-promoter, but you have to be kind of smart about it.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered all of that then. Just trying to think if there's anything else major that I've discovered about self-promotion in my many years of doing it. I haven't been to conventions in a while, but they were worth doing in terms of promotion, because a lot of the real movers and shakers in the scene are thought leaders, influencers, are the kind of people that go to conventions. So that can be useful, good for making contacts too, and talking to distributors and shops that you can sell to direct as well. That's something you can do at cons. I can't think of anything else.
Having your games reviewed by reviewers that people actually look at, right? Speaking of which, I'm one of those people. So if you have a game and you want to get a really, a review, then send me a print copy of your game, and I'm going to do a review about it. And there's a very long track record. Like I've done hundreds and hundreds of reviews by now. There's a very long track record of stuff I review getting bumps in sales, right? This has been reported by the people that sent the reviews. And this has happened even in cases sometimes where I've given very negative reviews, because some people will look at what I've said and they're like, oh, the pundit hated it, but I like this stuff, so I'm going to buy this, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but there was some game or other you gave a pretty bad review to, but because you described the mechanics and so on and what your issues were, I could see that it was something that would interest me. So I ended up buying it. I can't remember what it was now. God.
And nowadays I do video reviews, so that's even better. People will see your game, they'll see the inside of your game, and trust me, that's something you want. You want people to look at it. If assuming you've made a product you're proud of, then you want people to see it, right?
Yeah, and it's worth having a channel of your own for doing promotion and advertising. I mean, Drive-Thru will let you put a YouTube video on your product page. So if you want to do a walkthrough of your own game or explain the mechanics or host a demo session with some friends or something on a Hangout, and then put that on your sales page, that will help.
Yeah, Bedrock Games, when they published Arrows of Indra, they did a YouTube video that was basically like a YouTube commercial, and it showed, it showed images from the game combined with Indian classical music, right? I thought it turned out really cleverly. That's the only time that someone did that with one of my publishers did that with one of my games, but I think that had a really good promotional effect.
Just replying to someone on the chat there. I keep getting Swordfall and Sword Dream confused and using the wrong one, but they're both pretty much the same people.
Well, they're not the same thing, but they're both the same problem, right? So there we are. They're both wokeness in action.
Yeah, whether it'll actually amount to anything and produce something, I don't know. But
no, Sword Dream basically fell off the radar. It's just it was yet another failed attempt to destroy the OSR, right? They're not going. They haven't done anything and are not going to.
Yeah. I think we're about done then, since we're all a bit flaky.
Yeah, I suppose so. Time to get going. I'll just say, be sure to subscribe to Inappropriate Characters, share the video, click the notification bell so you'll get warned, because sometimes we don't give enough advance notice. Today we didn't really give enough advance notice. I forgot, to be honest. I had a busy week and I forgot to do promotion for this show.
I very nearly forgot.
Yeah, really. Like when guys, I have to admit, when Grim sent me a tweet reminding me, "Hey, are we doing this tonight?" I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, I'd completely forgotten. Anyway, but if you want us to get more serious about our Inappropriate Characters show, then by all means support us on Patreon. Check out our individual YouTube channels, especially mine, because it's the best. Let's be honest. I've got videos coming out about once every 5 days now, and my subscriber count has gotten quite notable, so I'm happy about that. And let's hope that we get more people getting into Inappropriate Characters and sharing it too.
What are you up to on your YouTube channel at the moment then, in sub count?
I think I'm getting close to like 1,300 subscribers, something like that. But the interesting thing is that I've got maybe 1,300 subscribers, let's say, but my average video is getting 1,300 or more views, right? So like the views are surpassing the number of subscribers I actually have right now. That's that to me is a very good ratio,
Yeah. What else is going on? So I'm still trying to push my own site where I sell my own stuff. It's post-mort.com. Drive through RPG, even if they're being naughty people in terms of censorship and so on, they have their Christmas in July sale at the moment. So if you want to pick up some bargain PDFs, including stuff by us, I'm sure, head on over there.
Yeah, I'll jump in with that and say that incredibly, the RPG Pundit Presents series, which is already really cheap, right? Like they're all priced between 99 cents and like $4.99. A number of the RPG Pundit Presents books are now on sale with the Christmas in July sale, which means that you can get them even cheaper than usual. So be sure to check those out. Also, Lords of Olympus, the PDF, which is also a gold bestseller on DTRPG, is on sale right now for just like $11, which is a really good price for Lords of Olympus. And I'm pretty sure, I don't remember which Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion. I think one of the two, not Dark Albion. Well, with Lion and Dragon, you can actually get the soft cover, the one that I had up at the beginning before my video cut out, and the PDF in a bundle for $19.31. Okay, that's less than $20. Nothing costs $20 these days, right? For under $20, you can get the soft cover Lion and Dragon. Now, if you want the hardcover Lion and Dragon and the PDF, it's only $26.50, which is also a remarkably good price. So those are both on sale right now.
See, that's how you shill your stuff.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. So be sure to check it out.
Good night, everybody.
All right, guys. Take care. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Poker plus I don't even remember what I was smoking in it, so screw it. Good night, guys.
Must have been some good shit then.
Yeah.
Night, everyone. Bye.